This is a recap of Scratch Club Week 3. During Week 3, we talked about how a sprite can rotate itself, and also when it moves around the screen, it can point in a direction and it can move in that direction. And if you look on what's on the screen right now, what I did was I put an arrow on a ball so that we can see what direction it's pointing in. And then I'm showing the direction, which is under the motion menu. I can just click on direction and it'll show me what direction I'm headed. And then I created a sprite here that just helps me know when I hit this red line, what direction am I going in right now? I'm going down in direction 135, and when I bounce back up, I expect to be going in direction 45, just like it says down here. So I did slow it down when it gets close to the line so we can stop and think about the math. But essentially, that's how a sprite rotates in Scratch. And if you notice, Scratch allows you to choose two different directions. I can either call it 315, or I can call it -45, or I can call it 270 or -90. Internally, what Scratch will do is it will use the negative number. So everything on this side of the circle is going to be a negative number, 1 to 180. And everything on this end of the circle is going to be 0 to 180. So that's, but internally, if you wrote some math and said, I want to point in direction 315, Scratch would totally accept that. And in fact, that's part of the code we're going to write today. So that's a little bit about angles, a little bit about how Scratch rotates images. And by the way, by default, when you choose an image, it's facing degree 90. It's facing the right. So if you think about whenever you open a new Scratch program, you have a cat. The cat isn't on his back facing the sky. He's facing to the right, and so I think that's why they do that. So by default, your new sprite that you just add is facing degree 90 or facing right. So in any case, I'll show you the game that we're going to write today. It's like a game where you move a paddle with your arrows. I'm moving my left and right arrow key and trying to keep my ball out of the water. So this is the basic game, and we gave the students an opportunity to just make the paddle move, make the ball bounce correctly off the paddle, and write some code. Oops, I'm trying to miss. So that if it goes in the water, it makes a splash sound and then starts over. So that was the basic game, and then we gave some challenges. And in the challenges, I encouraged the kids to play with pens, which actually we ran out of time. We're going to cover that next week. But in this finished game, I'm using some pens, if you'll see, to draw some clouds and the sun. We also added a score, not actually a score, but a number of lives left. So we'll say you've got 3 lives. This is a game where you may not want to accumulate positive points because there's nothing you're kind of achieving. It's what you're avoiding. You're avoiding hitting the water. So in that kind of a game, I would say when I miss, I lose a life and the game is over. Although some kids during the challenge decided they wanted a point every time their ball hit the paddle, and they also wanted to lose lives when they miss. So if you notice, I had 3 lives, now I have 2 when I miss. I also asked the students to try and handle the end of the game. There we go. Handle the game in some graceful way. So this plays a little sound, lets me know that I lost, and changes my sprite's costume. So that will be all the challenges finished. Both of these are on the Scratch Club webpage on the lz95.org website. But for now, let's create the game together. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the cat, and I'm going to add from the library a ball. And I'm also going to add a script to that ball as soon as that's done. Actually, I think I can go anyway. I'm going to put this here. It's going to say, as soon as I start the game, I want a forever loop in here. First, actually, I'm going to decide which direction I want my ball to turn. I'm going to have him, point. I'm going to have him point in direction 45. You can pick whatever you like. So I'm going to pick direction 45, and then forever, I'm going to say move 10 steps, and if I hit the edge, bounce. So if I run this code, there we go. I've got a ball and it's bouncing, and every time he hits the edge, he changes his direction, kind of similar to the code that we're going to write right now. The next thing I want to do is create my paddle. I'll do that with some of the drawing tools. Just to be clear, that there's a paint button up here if you wanted to paint a new costume for this sprite. In this case, we want two sprites. We want to have a paddle. What I asked the students to do, I'll give myself a little more room here. I asked the students to draw a box that goes all the way across the screen so that it can't miss. And that lets us just get our math and our script working without having to worry about moving the paddle. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So I just drew a box. I filled in green. You can pick whatever color suits you. And then I move it over. By default, it's kind of off center. I'm not sure why that is, but move it about there. And I'm going to give it a name. Very important in programming to give your sprites a name so that it's intuitive while you're playing and you know approximately, when you're looking at your code, you can read it in plain English. So now let's go to the ball. We're going to have the ball control what happens when it hits this paddle. It doesn't look like a paddle, but it will soon. I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to check forever, the whole game. Keep checking. Am I touching it? Am I touching it the whole time? Then I'm going to go to sensing, and I'm going to say, so it says forever, if I'm touching the paddle, this is where that name comes in handy so I can read my code well. Touching the paddle, what do I want to do? I'm going to give you the code, and it's also on the website in the instructions for this game. But I'm going to have it point in direction. I'm going to use a minus operator. I'm going to say 180 minus the direction that I'm going. So this will always take whatever direction I am in and give me the opposite, almost like a mirror image. So let's try that and make sure that that works. There we go. So I'm going to add one more thing in here. Some of the kids, including my own, once we take the edges off of this and make it a really small paddle, was getting kind of stuck on the side of the paddle. So I'm going to give it what I call a Y boost. If you remember, Y is the up and down direction. So if I want something to be a little higher on the up and down direction, I'm going to add 10 to it. It gives it a little boost. It bounces a little higher off the paddle. So the next thing I'll do, now that I've got that working, is, oops, I'm on the wrong sprite. Go to my paddle, and I'm going to just trim off some of the edge of my paddle so it's smaller. One thing that I didn't realize until we were in Scratch Club is that it's really good. If you notice this X, you want it to be as centered as possible, and you can just eyeball it, but you want that to be centered, I guess, horizontally, so that it moves smoothly, which is our next step, is to make this paddle move. We did this last week with the other game, so it should be easy. I'm going to say move right. I want to point in direction right, and I want to move 10 steps. Right is the default. If you forget, you can pick it here. I'm going to right click and duplicate and make another one for left. So now I'm going to say, I'm going to run this. Now when I'm hitting my, oops, I made a mistake, left. There we go. So now when I hit my left arrow, oh, look at that. That's crazy. This happened to all of us, actually. If you hit the I and you change your rotation style to this, that would take care of it. Another way to eliminate that would be to put your paddle completely centered in the middle of your image, and then it wouldn't do that. So now I've got a really nice moving paddle. Oops, except that I'm missing the ball. There we go. Okay, so that's about right. I'm going to move this up a little bit because the next step is going to be for us to draw a lake. I'm going to make a new costume because, I'm sorry, not a new costume, a new sprite. I'm going to paint it. You can either draw a box make sure that it's filled in with the lake color. Some of the kids also got fancy with this tool and drew a little, you know, I won't do it too long, but you can do that. As long as you make it all the way end to end, you can fill that in with your fill tool. So that's an option as well. Okay, so now I have a lake. I'm going to name it lake so I can read my code. Move it down to the bottom. And then I'm going to add a script very similar to the one that I've already added to my ball. I'm going to say, this one says when I'm touching the paddle, turn in the opposite direction, and my little Y boost. This is going to say, when I touch the lake, what do I do? And I told the kids they could decide what they wanted to do. I'll duplicate that because I need a lot of that code. This time I'm going to say, when I'm touching the lake, I recommend a good thing to do would be to hide, because it's weird to be kind of sitting in the water like that. Maybe make a sound. There's a kind of a great sound called plunge that sounds like you're plunging into the water. So we hit OK to add that, and now I can play it. Play sound plunge. I'm going to make sure that I show it again, otherwise my game will be very boring without the ball here. I'm going to say, wait 1 second, and then let's just change my Y position to 180, which is the top of the screen, and then show myself. Oops, wrong place. Right there. So that should cover it. So let me let this loose. I hear the plunge. It waits kind of a second and then goes to the top of the screen and lets me start over. So that's basically the game, the basic game. If I wanted to add some more things in here, I would make the paddle, or this paddle code, play maybe a drum beat under sounds. Let's do that because that's easy. If I'm touching the paddle, play a bass drum. I would also add a score, like I said before. Oops, and then I missed. Oops, what's happening there? Let's point in the direction and then play the drum. Let's start that over. I think I stopped the code in the middle. So let's add a show to the start. So no matter what happens, my ball is always going to show. There we go. So I hear the bounce. If I let it go, plunge and start over. Perfect. The next challenge would be to add a score. That's all available if you want to see the source code for that. Again, on the lz95.org website, on the Scratch page. And I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Next week we'll be covering pens and stamping. And we're also going to go over the drawing tools for drawing costumes and backgrounds.